Hi, so I'm Charles. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Alan. Before starting Alan, I was in San Francisco for 5 years, first working as data scientist at Facebook, back when data science was not a thing yet. I learned about the word when they showed me the contract. And so I was working over there on fighting fake accounts. That was not a thing yet also on Facebook. And worked on building the first ad platform on Instagram. Then I got poached by Twitter, worked a couple of years over there, leading their data science team in growth, and then decided to come back to start Alan with my co-founder, Jean-Charles Samuelian. You probably have heard of Alan, at least I hope you have. Our mission is to empower people to live healthier lives with minimal effort. And so to do that, we started by building the best health insurance. So we became the first new insurance in France since 1986. I was not even born yet at the time. Neither was my co-founder, which is kind of crazy. And so very quickly, I'm not going to talk about Alan for the whole pitch. I don't think that's the idea. We're right now at 23 million of annual recurring revenue. We have 28,000 insured people. We have like 2,200 companies who are that are insured with Alan. It's not bad. We created the company in 2016, so it's not been that long. And we have a great team, and basically the talk is going to be about like how we built that great team and how we created the culture to enable that that awesome team. So, and with that team, actually, it's all about execution. Like we have numbers. It's only 1% of what we actually want to do, and so how do we make that team do execution the way we want it? And so before starting, I want to do a small disclaimer. I'm going to present things that worked for us. It might not work as is for you. I don't want you to be cargo culting and expecting to do the little dance that we've done and have the rain come down just like you had at 6 p.m. And so really, like, you take what makes sense for you. You don't take what doesn't make sense for you. What's important is that you understand what you take and what you don't take. So I'm just also gonna speak about like only the first 2 stages of blitzscaling. So your organization, as you start, is like a few people. It would be a little bit weird to start with a ton of people in a startup. And so I'm gonna only talk about like the stage where there's like a few people, so less than 10 people in the company, and the stage where there's between 10 and 100 people in the company. We're right now 70 at Alan, so I wouldn't be able to speak about like the hundreds yet. I might come back next year. And so first, what I want to talk about is why should we build a top team? I mean, building a top team is expensive. You have to pay people who are like really good a lot of money. It takes a lot of time if you want to get the best people. Like, you really have to spend your time sourcing them and like giving them the best environment. But it's very clear why you'd want to have the top team. I think you're all convinced, otherwise you wouldn't be here right now. And so what the reason why I build a top team is that talent brings talent, and the top people will always build something of quality that you won't have to come back to fix later, and you save a lot of time in terms of growing your company. So to build our company, so we start from scratch, which is a huge advantage. When you're doing a startup, you can redefine the rules. You're the only ones who can decide, okay, I want to build my company this way, or I don't want to build this way. When you're in a big company, you have to steer like thousands of people to do things the way you want to do them. So I think it would be crazy for startups not to take advantage of starting from a blank sheet and redefining crazy rules. I mean, by starting from scratch, you can define the constraints, and we're at Alan huge believers of creativity under constraint. Basically, by putting your constraints early on, you're going to be able to think about why you're doing things, because you can't just apply the thing that worked in the other company, because you have put your constraints that will say, no, you can't do that. I'm going to show you in a minute what constraints we put ourselves. And the idea of creativity under constraint is not new. I mean, in literature, for example, you have the Oulipo, which forces writers to write with certain constraints. So an example is Georges Perec writing La Disparition without a single E in the book. He wrote an amazing book without a single E. And so we're trying to get inspired by that and do our own Oulipo, in a sense. So how to put those constraints? Those constraints, we put values, and we define those values like at the very beginning of the company. We don't think that values are meant to stay in a little drawer and people take it out like every couple of years to see what they had and compare the company with their value. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't think that we want also to have the values that the big companies would put on the wall and say, okay, we're transparent now, and actually nobody believes in it. So we really wanted to have those values ingrained into the culture of Alan and really build everything based on those constraints. So the first of the constraints, and I'm going to explain you a little bit why we decided on those constraints. The first of them is transparency. We decided to go with full transparency. It's a little bit because we're lazy. When you're transparent, you don't have to think about who knows what and who should be knowing what, and if I talk to that person, maybe they didn't know and they're going to be angry that that other person knew about that thing. If you're transparent, you don't have all those problems. So we decided transparency, great. It's an awesome value to have. Second one is ownership. It's also out of laziness that we decided that. Basically, if the people in the company are owners and make sure that they do their work and they take pride into their work and they can take the decisions themselves, that makes less decisions to have to take within the founding team. So it's all the better for us. And the third one is trust. It's also something great. We're hiring adult people. People usually, if you see them on the street, they don't do crazy things. They know how to behave. Why wouldn't they be able to behave in a company as well? And so what we're trying to give is to give them trust and have them trust us, and so we can do things way more smoothly than what you would do in your average company today. So now the actionable bits, because that was a little bit theoretical. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the how and about the things that we put in place, and hopefully that's going to inspire you to put into your companies. So the first thing that we didn't do was to put on a hierarchy. Hierarchies are like really ingrained in all societies since the dawn of mankind. Basically, it's easy. You have somebody at the top who has all the power, and they can like throw a little bit of power to a few people who are going to be then taking charge of like small pieces. The problem of hierarchy is that you always have to go all the way to the. There's only one person who decides, and it goes only top down, and it's a little bit sad for us. So we decided to rather work in a network where all people can take decisions and can share with the other people. That creates a lot of redundancies. So it's not the most efficient way of communicating, because people are going to talk, like each people are going to be speaking to 3 people in that graph, whereas they were speaking to only 1. But at the same time, that creates redundancy, and that's a good thing, because you have the knowledge that is shared and the understanding that is shared between the people. Another thing on ownership. So what we decided to do is to decentralize completely the decision making. So the way we work at Alan is that instead of doing meetings, we do GitHub issues. So and everybody, not even just on the engineering team, everybody does GitHub issues. You have a decision to make. You're gonna write your issue with first the scope, what is the problem that you're trying to solve. You give the context and the materials that people need to have to be able to participate to the decision. You give your proposal, and you ping a few people, and then you give your timeline. And people then comment and give you some feedback. The great thing about it is that you have an identified owner of the decision. There's always one person who's going to be making the decision, is the person who opened the issue. And so they're going to take feedback from all the people, and it can be somebody really junior in the team. They're going to take the feedback, and as a founder, I'm going to comment. I'm going to tell, did you consider that thing? Did you think of that solution? And the person who's opened the issue is going to take that and take all the information that they had, that they've solicited to all the other people, and will take the best informed decision based on that. An example that I can take is recently we decided to type our Python, and it was a junior engineer who decided to take on the subject. He gathered all the information, and at the end he had way more information than I would have. So why would I be the one making the decision? I think it made more sense for that person to actually make the decision. And so they took the feedback from all the people and decided ultimately, and spoiler, we decided to go with typing. And so a corollary to that, I should stop using that word, is the written culture. So since we're taking all our decisions on GitHub, it's all a written culture. So instead of having people in meetings like shouting one over the other, like who's gonna be the loudest to make the decision, it's all gonna be written. I can go back to like April 2017 and understand why we took that decision about our users and who commented what and what were the arguments at the time. So it's great because we can go back to this. It's asynchronous, so people can think about it a little bit more. You don't have to be quick-witted to get to your best decision. And ultimately, it helps transparency because everybody can see every single decision. And so everybody at Aaron can understand why we took all the decisions, and they can inform better their future decisions. Ownership, we have also, and this is actually a little bit more trust, but autonomy. So we really believe that people at Aaron should be autonomous, and so we give them a lot of trust. People do their schedule the way they want to have their schedule. So, for example, for engineers, engineers are going to be on a maker schedule. So you might see some people arriving at like 12 p.m. and leaving the office at 10 p.m. And that's awesome. That means that they optimize their agenda to use the times where they feel the most productive. And I think that's awesome. And it's the same for remote work. Like sometimes it's easier to work from home because you have the plumber coming over or whatever, or you're working from home because you feel like super energized, and you feel like by staying at home you're going to be more focused than if you were in the office and you had some people like poking you over the shoulder. And so we really feel that people should be autonomous in that way. Another example on how we let people feel autonomous is we do unlimited vacation. So basically, instead of like trying to track what is the vacation people end up taking, we're trying to say, okay, you're the master of your calendar. You take the vacation that you need when you need it. And actually, like the sad thing is that I end up having to push people to take more vacation because they're really, really intensely in their work. Another thing about trust, we felt like we need to trust the organization, and so there's that concept of burst factor. At any point in time, we really believe that our organization should be resilient. So basically, if somebody was hit by a bus, we should not have to shut down the company tomorrow. It would be really sad to have somebody hit by a bus, but things happen, you don't know. And so what we're trying to do is to share the knowledge as much as possible. So that's what I was showing a little bit with the no hierarchy and having a network. It helps sharing the knowledge to make sure that there's not a single point of failure, like that person who, if they went away, we would have to shut down. And so the goal is to make our burst factor go up. So if we take 2 people that are really indispensable, that we wouldn't have to shut down. And the goal, and I don't think that it's really feasible, would be that we would only shut down if we only had no more people left in the company. I don't think we're at that stage yet. Another a little bit of story on hiring. So we were trying to hire our first engineers, and so to hire, I hired those people. I tried to inspire myself of Travis Kalanick when he sent his first tweet about Uber, and actually we got our first engineer from that tweet because somebody in San Francisco referred me to a person who would then move to France and join us. So that was a little bit of story there. To really gain the trust, I think what is really important is to really invest in the hiring process. So our hiring process is pretty exhaustive. There's six steps in that hiring process. It's really important because those people that you're gonna work with, like you might work with them for like 3, 5, 10 years, and so you have to make sure that they're absolutely the best in their category. And so there's nothing better for that to actually try to get to know them. So what do we do to really get a really strong hiring process? First, we're trying to focus more on outbound rather than inbound. Usually the best people are already have an awesome job, because if they're awesome, they're gonna be like a little bit bored if they're not in an awesome job. And so we're always gonna try to see who are the best people and contact them and see if they want to work with them. After that, we do a screening where we try to sell as much as possible our vision and explain like the specificities of the model that we have. Then we send questions, basically written questions, to make sure that people are comfortable in English. So we work in English exclusively. We have 6 Americans on the team. We also have that written culture, as I mentioned, and so it's really important that we have people who are comfortable writing in English. And then like we have an interview about technical interview, because we need to know if the person is good or not. We have a behavioral interview. So that I think was our answer to the question earlier to Quentin. Like, how do we figure out if someone is a diva or not? We have a full interview of 1 hour where we dig down really deep on their past experiences to understand if that person reacted well and what are their values and what would they bring to the culture at Aaron if we hired them. And so, and the last step that we have in our hiring process is what we call a full day. So basically it's, we bring the person for a complete day at the office. So that achieves 2 things. First, we can know if we would like to work with that person. I think it's pretty important. And more important than that is if the candidate wants to work with us. It's pretty sad to see like people come on the first day and realize that the company is not at all what they actually hoped for, and then they're stuck for like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years with going to work that they wouldn't like. So it would be pretty silly for us not to bring them on and make them work as if it was their first day. Still on trust, so one thing that we've tried to do on hiring is we wrote something that we call the Freedom Pledge. Basically, we pledged to let the people who work at Aaron go if they have a better opportunity somewhere else. And we're trying to get all the other companies to sign that pledge as well. Because we feel like somebody who's not happy in a company, they should be open about it so we can solve their problems. Whereas in most cases, that trust doesn't exist, and if you're unhappy in a company, you're just gonna go interview somewhere else and tell your manager at the last minute, okay, I'm gone. You haven't had the chance to solve my problems. So that's pretty unfortunate, and so we really hope to change the way people work and the way and give the opportunity for the people who work at Aaron to get better and better opportunities and make sure that they're gonna blossom in another company if they don't blossom at Aaron. Back on ownership, and so that's a decision that we made. This is a little bit more specific to engineers. We tried to have everybody full stack at Aaron. And by full stack, it's actually a little bit cheating. We're more with specialists that these guys as generalists. Basically, we want to have engineers that don't just do backend. And when they have a front-end thing, they just throw their thing over the fence and say, "Oh, it's not me. It's the other team that has to do that." First, because it takes a lot of time to coordinate between those teams, and also because it's actually good for all the people who work at Aaron to know and learn about the other, about the other roles and be able to work on both front end and back end so that they can do a complete feature instead of splitting the work between two people who might not have the same context. And so, still related to trust, I think there's a few key things that are super important, and like a successful engineering team will have to have. It's pretty basic, but having version control, so getting all the things is really important. Having pull requests, so to make sure that there's a reviewer, somebody that can review the code of the other person, that helps with the sharing of knowledge between the two people, and also to help people in the team up level. So usually, if somebody puts a pull request, gets reviewed, gets a few comments, that person who put up the pull request will learn from the comments from that other person who might be more senior, but also could be more junior and want to learn why that person wrote the code the way they wrote their code. Same thing, testing is super important, and I think it's pretty basic, but like code that is not tested, it can't be trusted, and so that means that you're not going to be as fast ultimately. And so it's really important to test your code. It's easier to do it in the back end, but it's also important in front end, although the frameworks are less mature in front end. Accountability. That's also one thing that helps with trust a lot. So early on at Alan, we decided to be really accountable with all the things that we did. So we decided to create, to have an email with all the things that we've done during the week and the things that we plan to do for the next week, and send it every single Wednesday to all the investors and to all the people of the team. So it has two great things about it. First, it keeps us accountable because we're not, if we say we're going to do a ton of things and then next week you see that we haven't done them, it's not going to go well. And having the investors, it's pretty useful to have that. Second, you have full transparency, and so that changes the way you communicate information from pool, where people ask you, hey, what's the status on that thing, to push. Everybody knows that all the information is going to be in that email to everyone. And so everybody is on the same page, everybody has the same access to information. And that is forcing everyone to make sure that they search before asking and bothering someone asking for information. Transparency. Still on transparency, we have a few other ways to promote transparency. Every single person is going to have a one-on-one with a coach every other week. It's really important because it helps build trust, because you create a privileged relationship between two people, and also gives transparency between a person who will be able then to share what are their hardship, what they're having a hard time with, and where we could get the company to be better. And so those are the things that we're trying to put in our one-on-ones. We're trying to do full transparent reviews, so 360 reviews. So every single person at the company is getting every 6 months. Actually, for newcomers, it's after 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and then every 6 months. And basically, they get a review from 5 people in the team that they've worked with, it's a public document, so everybody knows on what people have to work and get better for the next cycle. And based on that, we can promote people to the next level. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our salary grid just after that. And one key tool that we use to get full transparency is radical candor. So that's the name of a book that's pretty interesting, that pushes people to be radically honest. So basically telling people really what they think without like being hypocrites or like really coding that in sugar, like really telling straight what they think, but also caring about the other person. Because if you don't care about the other person, it's just an aggression and it's not very productive. So we use that a lot, and I'm going to refer to that at the end in a reading list of books. One more thing that we use for transparency is also retrospectives. So that's a pretty common tool as well in the toolbox of companies. But basically, if you don't have retrospectives, you don't know what you can learn from things that went well or didn't go well. And so for every single thing that is sizable that we ship, we're going to open a retrospective. We usually do that asynchronously because we have that written culture. So typically we do that in a Trello, and somebody gathers all the information, and then they do a synthesis and share that with everyone so that we can constantly learn from our mistakes and also from our successes. And so I'm getting to the last interesting bit. So this is actually factual. So if you can take pictures if you want. So we shared for transparency. We shared completely our salary grid. We published it on Madiness. We share it completely within the team, so everybody knows how much a person is going to make at the company. And that is really, really important. When that comes back to starting from scratch, we were able to put that kind of transparency and put a salary grid like this out in the open because we did it from the get-go. If you're trying to do that with a company with 300 people, with 1,000 people, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be pretty unhappy because there's always going to be those a few cases where you put a little bit more money to get that person, and so they make more money than the other people who do the same job, and they feel that's unfair. With that grid, like, we can't be unfair because everybody would know. And so if somebody if somebody is at a level that they don't actually give like the output of that level, it's not gonna work well with the team. It was pretty useful for us to do from the start to have that transparency with the salary grid, because we were hiring a few people from Silicon Valley, and typically when you offer 80,000 euros for a senior engineer in Paris, for someone who's been working in San Francisco and has been making $250 a year, it doesn't go super well, except if you're able to show that the people that they respect in the team are making the same thing. And that they're able to see, okay, this is actually the right amount of money to get in Paris. That's what people get in the company. I'm not getting screwed. I have the full information to finally decide to move to Paris from San Francisco. So for that, it was really, really important for us to be transparent with this. Also, so this is more transparency, but also a little bit ownership. We give out for every single person in the company, we give out equity. I think it's only fair that if we manage to do an exit to like 1 billion, 3 billion, 5 billion, perhaps more, that the people who contributed to the success of the company, that they actually make enough money to be comfortable. And so like any person in the company, from like the person entry-level customer support to like the really high VPs and C-level, they're all gonna have some equity. And it's, to me, really key that if you want to align the incentive for the whole team. And again, we're completely transparent with it, because I think it's a great way to market our company. And also because that way people don't find it unfair compared to other people in the company. And then one other thing that's great about the grid is that it gives clear steps where you can go from one level to another. So I was talking about reviews earlier. Reviews typically can get people promoted. And if they get promoted, they get to a level above, and we give them the differential between the two levels, which gives them a lot more incentive to get better and get promoted. And if somebody is promoted within the team, it's actually a huge gain for the company, because that means that their output is much better, and that we don't have to hire somebody who's going to be really expensive from the outside, and that we're going to spend a lot of time trying to chase. So that's also one thing that I think is really key for us. And one last tip that I think is super, super important is that people should be reading. Like, I don't think we've invented a lot in what we've done. We started from scratch, and what we've done was to read a lot, understand how other companies were doing, and why they were doing it that way. And reading a book is usually the best way to get into somebody else's brain and suck up all the information from there, and understand what are the mistakes that they made and how we can avoid them. And so, like, this list is some of the books that really inspired us, and so I can only encourage you to read them if you find them interesting. Cool, so that was quite a bit. I think I went over the time, maybe. Do you have questions? Happy to take anything. Thank you.
Hi. You discussed about decision ownership and how anybody can decide anything. I just wanted to know how it happens when a decision is about unmaking a decision somebody else took. How do you do in that case?
So we have a rule that we don't reopen an issue that we've closed unless we have more information. And so if we made a decision and we're not happy about it, but we learned something new, we can definitely reopen that decision and say, okay, this is what we've learned since we closed that other issue. Let's see if we can get to another conclusion because we have other arguments, and we go through the same process, and we might get to the same decision or another decision, but at least people have the opportunity to feel heard, not necessarily listened to, but heard about the decision. And I think that's the key thing if you want to build trust.
Okay, understood. So basically, if a project is running late or something's getting a lot of delays, you just can say, yeah, it's a new information because it's hot schedule, so...
Yeah, if something is running late, like it's really important to not fall into the sunk cost fallacy. Basically, the idea that, okay, I've been paying that much to get up to where I am, and so I should continue being wrong and go all the way. We don't think you should do that. We think that you should take all the information that you have at time t and decide at time t with all the best information. And if it's changing course completely, okay, we've lost some time and some engineering time. It's fine. We're gonna gain that by not persevering into that wrong decision.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering, you talked a lot about hiring top people.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about having junior people on the team. Yeah. And I feel like startups especially tend to hire interns before, and then after try to chase, let's say, bigger people. Did you start by hiring top people from the start at Alan, or did you go through interns before? Well, what was the process?
No, actually, we tried to hire senior people from the start because, and we were really careful in choosing those senior people. So our first employee at Alan is actually Bertrand, who has who had 25 years of experience in insurance and was able to really understand the intricacies of the insurance world, and being able to work with Jean-Charles and I, who were both completely new. We knew nothing about insurance, and we were able to get like a lot of questions going, and that person was able to tell us, okay, this is going to work, this is not going to work. That helped us a lot. And so that was our first hire. Then for engineering, also, I was not a software engineer when I started, so I needed to hire people who were better than me at software engineering. So the first 3 people that we actually hired were senior people coming from Facebook, Mixpanel, and UCSF, and they were like, we really tried to invest because those people are gonna put the first brick, and if that first brick is not stable, your whole castle is gonna fall apart.
Thank you. I feel like you're the kind of like the exception doing this, but I think that's great. Thanks.
I mean, like, and then you're gonna see which companies are gonna do well and not do well, and I feel like by building on solid ground, we're gonna be you increase significantly your chances of doing well.
Hi. So, how would you describe the dealing with senior people, working with them, managing them? Is it a big challenge? We often hear many stories how difficult it is. So, following your experience, what could you say about it?
So, the key thing is that if you hire smart people, like, you don't want to tell them what to do because they know better than you do what they have to do. You want them to tell you what you should be doing to make them the most effective. And so, like, it's about building that relationship of trust between that person and yourself. That senior person, they're not gonna join your startup if they don't believe in something. So the fact that they are already there is that they believe in the project, they believe in you, they believe in the founding team, and you have to give them back that trust and make sure that they have all they need to be effective, and trust them to do the right thing, because otherwise they wouldn't be there. Like, I don't think it's fun to work at a startup if the startup is going to fail.
Thank you.
Hi, how did you meet your co-founders?
So we're only two co-founders, and Jean-Charles and I, we actually met in engineering school 10 years ago. and we've remained friends ever since. And so that helps a lot, like having that trust issue being sorted out, like from the beginning. That helps a lot, and because you will end up spending like pretty much all your time with your co-founders. In my case, it was more than all the time. I was also roommates with him, and we had the company at our place. So if it didn't work, like that would have been really, really bad. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. I think you made a previous company before, right? So
My co-founder did, and I did not work with him.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
I had two questions. The first one is, what got you started? Because you said you knew nothing really that much about insurance.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to make that story short. Basically, we started like by we started from we realized that data was not well utilized in health at all. Like we had seen a few cases, sometimes very close to us, where by using data we would be able to have better outcomes by preventing certain outcomes in medicine. And so we decided to work on health and data, and our first idea was to build tools to help people know when to go to the doctor. We realized very quickly that we would need to distribute that. We could go through individuals, to go through health professionals, or go through insurances. Individuals, they're not ready to pay for preventions. They don't own their own data. Same thing for health professionals. And so the solution was to go through health insurances. So we went and we talked to them, and we realized very quickly that their tech was stuck in the 90s for the better cases. Some of them are stuck in 1946. And even in terms of business, they were not able to move in between before 1 or 2 years. And so we decided that we needed to be that actor, and that there was lacking that actor becoming an insurance. And we were up for the challenge, and we became the first new insurance for the past 30 years. So I guess that worked. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. And my second question is, how do you position yourself in the French market, knowing there's La Carte Vitale? How do you complete that positioning?
I mean, you have to work with the Sécu in a lot of cases, but still, like 96% of people in France have a complementary insurance, so a mutuelle, and the experience is not good at all. Like you may pay with the Carte Vitale, but then you don't know when you're going to be reimbursed by your complementary health insurance. Teletransmission works like not always. You have to communicate with them with paper. You have to send them the invoices and like through the snail mail. And what we're trying to do is change all of that and take it apart from the core and rebuild that in a way that looks a little bit more like the 21st century.
Thank you a lot.
Hi, I'm Anis. I have two questions. The first one is about the pricing. How did you build the pricing model without data? I'm wondering if you took the Medium or something else. And the second one, you are an insurance, so there is the ICPR, so yeah. Risk, solvency.
Yeah.
So did you model all this, or you proceed? Thank you.
Sure. So first, I'm going to answer the second question, because the first one is more interesting, and so I want to take more time on it. So the second question, so we, of course, there's ACPR, which is the regulator. We need to have a license. It took like 5 months for us to get a license. But it's great because it's a huge barrier to entry, and once you pass the barrier to entry, you see that there's nobody in front of you, and also there's no one behind you because the barrier to entry is so high that people don't follow you. So why it was easy for us is because we're in the health system where you have the CQ behind that takes about 78%, and specifically they take the long tail of the risk, and so you only have like a very short frequential risk, and so that means that in your bank account you can have like 10 million euros. We raised 12 million euros as our seed in our seed round, and that's enough actually for the ACPR, for the regulator. And actually, because we were a startup, their conditions were much higher than they would be for like AXA, Generali, or other things. And so for the first question on pricing, we didn't have any data, and I was the one to do it. I went on and scraped all the comparators of insurance on the internet, got all the plans there, reversed the metrics, and got implicit prices for all the guarantees that we would offer. And based on that, we built our own product. So that was the top-down solution. And then we went to a consulting firm that had some data to make sure that they could validate our pricing. We didn't tell them how much our product was going to cost, and they fell like €1 apart from what we had found with our top-down approach. And so by using both approaches, we were pretty confident in putting our product on the market.
Thank you.
Hi. Your first investors was Pathtech. Why did you choose Pathtech and not the other investors in the place?
I mean, technically, they're not the first investors, and they have like a very tiny share in our equity. And so, yeah, I mean, like, Pathtech is a pretty good brand in France, and they've been good partners. We're a very small investment for them, so I'm not going to talk a lot about what they can do. Yeah.
Hi. In an organization that is a network like you described,
yeah.
What does it mean to have different job levels? So why do you have VPs, senior engineers, junior engineers?
Yeah, so I mean, like, we were not fond of titles in general, and so when I was saying junior engineers, it was really a way to say, okay, that person is at, let's say, level C, whereas a senior engineer would be level F. Basically, that shows that they might take on like larger projects, but in that network organization, and that worked only at the family stage. Like, we have to rethink the organization every 6 months or something like that. But basically in that network organization, yeah, people are peers, so there's no like hierarchy between the two. But like a junior person will more likely go for mentoring with a senior person. But at the end of the day, they're both writing code, and like somebody is gonna ask for feedback, and the senior engineer is gonna need as well a review on the code, and it can be from a junior engineer, and that doesn't matter. If they're a senior engineer, they're not gonna be able to merge the code without the review.
So when you hire them, How do you choose on which level they are hired?
So we have a very comprehensive grid of decision criteria, but basically we do all the way the hiring process, and we decide on like the size of impact that they can show, like the past project that they can explain, if they can explain fairly well what they've been doing in a structured way, if the impact was big on the companies that they were working on in the past. And ultimately, like, everybody gives a grade in the recruiting process, and we do a debrief at the end. Everybody has all the information, and we make a decision based on all that information.
Okay, thank you.
That make sense? Yeah.
A last question, someone? Yeah.
Hello, thanks for the talk. Since you said there's a lot of ownership from everybody, how do you coordinate the work between the product and the engineers at Talon? So
that's something that I didn't point at, but we didn't have any product managers up until like 6 months ago. The idea is that to us, and that's part of the full stack, is that engineers are going to be the ones making things, so they need to have as much as possible, like, ownership on the how we make things, and they need to contribute early on to why we make things. They need to contribute to what we make, and in that sense, there's the designers who actually decide on what we make with the contribution of the engineer, and ultimately it's the engineer who decides completely how they're going to make it, and if they need, they're going to change the what, because sometimes by doing the how, you realize that, okay, if we cut that feature, it's going to work just as well, and it's going to take me 20% of time, so I'm just going to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
And maybe to complete that, we've hired some product people, but the goal is more on thinking ahead and looking at what we're going to do next, rather than making sure to give to feed tiny spoons to little developers that are going to make a little product. I don't think that's how it should work, and I feel like giving more ownership to engineers is the right way to do it.